Hey everybody, welcome. It's Tuesday. It's time for the Adventure Prep stream. How y'all doing? It's been a while since we've done one of these. Hey, guess what I forgot? Oh no, I have some water. I do, okay. You know me. Great, just checking and let me know if you can see me and hear me okay. Welcome everybody, it's Tuesday. It's time for the Adventure Prep stream. It has been a while, like I was saying. We have not done one of these in a little bit, and I'm excited to kind of get back on the horse. Just had a couple of weeks where I've either been off or not really having a great mental health day on Tuesday, but I'm feeling great and I'm ready, and we are here to talk about this campaign that I'm running. So I kind of had a little explosion of clients the past couple of weeks. I picked up 3 more clients. 2 of them are renewals, but they're for more recurring gigs, so which is awesome. But I also have 1 brand new client, and that's the game we're gonna be talking about today. Hey, what's up, David? Thanks for coming. Yeah, so they are a group of 12, 12 I almost said 12, like 12 players. No, it's a group of 5 players. They're like 11 and 12-year-olds. That's kind of my age range right now. Not that I, hey, what's up? Lena T, thanks for coming. Awesome. I think I know who that is. I could be wrong, but I recognize the red panda. Yeah, so it's a group of 5 12-year-olds. They're pretty good kids. They're a little new still. They've never played Dungeons and Dragons before, and they took my campaign pitches. What I normally do when I have a new group and we're starting at session 0 is I pitch them a number of different campaigns, and they picked Epic Fantasy, of course, which is actually why I started to take it out of the rotation, because I felt like people just kept picking Epic Fantasy every time, and like, it's cool, but, you know, let's do something more fun. You know, let's do Gothic Horror, or let's do Swashbuckling Voyage, or whatever, you know. So they picked Epic Fantasy, and I was kind of talking through their backstories and their ideas of what they wanted to do. And I had kind of been planning on running a sort of like, yeah, that's what I thought. What's up? Kimmy, how you doing? I had kind of thought about doing a a like Tyranny of Dragons, sort of Rise of Tiamat kind of a thing. I'm running Storm King's Thunder for another group, and I don't want to do multiple versions of the same campaign. But then kind of the more they talked about their backstory, and they came up with this idea that like the local government had recently been overthrown by this tyrant, this warlord, and that was going to kind of maybe be positioned as the big bad. The more I thought maybe that Red Hand of Doom from 3rd edition might be a good call. You know, it's got that big army feel, and it comes with its own map and everything like that. So I thought maybe that would be better than doing yet another adventure on the Sword Coast. So, yeah, I'm running a very modified, heavily mediated version of Red Hand of Doom from 3rd edition. If you're not familiar, the basic strokes of that adventure involve a, like, large hobgoblin army that is trying to conquer this, you know, generic fantasy. It's called the Elseer Vale. I know Matt Colville has a video about it. And I'm making a lot of big changes to it to give it a little bit more of a Tyranny of Dragons kind of a feel. In the original adventure, the leader of that... So this is spoilers, I guess, for Red Hand of Doom if you're going to play this old adventure. But in that, the leader of this hobgoblin army is a cultist of Tiamat. But it has a lot of the 3rd edition-y, like, all hobgoblins are evil, and they're just conquering because they want to conquer, and there's no real... You know, there's no examination of some of those tropes. So I wanted to get rid of some of that. I'm gonna keep a lot of the touchstones of it. There is going to be a hobgoblin army, but they are going to be kind of unsullied style mercenary soldiers that are working for another group of baddies. The goal is still going to be to bring Tiamat back, right? Except this time the villain is a group of 5 Dragonborn, 1 for each color, right, of the 5 heads of Tiamat. And they're kind of like a little adventuring party / cult called the Hand of Doom, right? There's 5 of them, the 5 fingers of doom. Although I'm not a big fan usually of those kinds of names. Like, they can work. I think Hand of Doom is pretty cool, but calling someone like, I'm the thumb and I'm the pointer, and I'm like, you know, it gets kind of silly. But the long and short of it essentially is that the party is going to end up coming into conflict with this hobgoblin army and their sort of like draconic patrons. There's an artifact in play that is necessary to bring Tiamat back. But all of that is a little bit high-level stuff, where I'm not too worried about that right now. The main thing that we're doing today is that we are going to be brainstorming some stuff to put in our keep. So essentially what's going on is that I am starting them off with an introductory adventure. For those of you who watched my Storm King's Thunder prep, it's pretty similar. The characters are all kind of based around a small village. They're the local heroes of that village. I've chosen Witchcross, which is one of the villages in Elseer, in Red Hand of Doom. I think Red Hand of Doom starts with a village called Drellin's Ferry, and I just didn't like that name as much, so I ended up picking Witchcross, and I think positionally it's better. Long story short, basically, the party... Witchcross is protecting an artifact, an orb of dragon kind, that the cultists need in their ritual to bring back Tiamat. It's protecting it because of some lore that is tangential to today's stream. But essentially, the bad guys sent a party of marauders to go and attack Witchcross and try to extort the magic item out of them. Now, none of this happened in game. This is all sort of backstory. But it was the party's first adventure off-screen to repel the marauders and to protect the orb. So what they did is we talked about it, and they decided that there's a famous prison in Witchcross. They locked up the like dozen mercenaries in the prison, and they stashed the artifact somewhere else, so it's hidden. But it's well known in the region that this hobgoblin army has moved in and conquered a city to the north, and that it's starting to send these roving bands out to gather resources and kind of prepare some kind of a plan. So the local leaders of the town council of Witchcross, basically decided that they need a more fortified structure. The jail is not really ready to defend itself in case it falls under attack, and they fear that a larger force is coming. You know, they correctly fear that, to try to claim this artifact. So what they've done is they've sent the party on a mission to the nearest structure that will sort of serve their purposes. Witchcross is located on the eaves of a large Mirkwood-style forest called the Witchwood, and the Witchwood has a couple of character backstories intertwined in it, but it also has a structure. This I'm borrowing a little bit from Red Hand of Doom. There is a keep called Vath Keep, V-A-A-T-H. I shortened it just to Vath Keep because it felt cleaner. And the idea is that it's an old crumbled fortress in the sort of in the forest, like a day's march into the forest, that the town of Witchcross is hoping can be rehabilitated into a fallback location for the people of Witchcross. If these marauders come and attack the village in force, they can fall back into the forest and they can set up here in this keep. But the keep has been ruined for a long time, and so classic Dungeons & Dragons adventure, go to the keep, clear it out, make sure that it's ready for, you know, these villagers to retreat to should the worst happen. What the party doesn't know is that Hobgoblin force is already on the march, and that by the time they come back to Witchcross, it will already be aflame, and refugees will be kind of fleeing into the forest to try to get away from them. So, but we're not worried about that today. Today, we are just worried about designing this keep. Our characters are first level, and there are 5 of them. Let's write down the party breakdown, actually. They don't have a name yet. They're still kind of discussing it. The party's a little silly. Like, the players are kind of, they like to reference memes. They like to be kind of goofy. They're not particularly serious. My Storm King Thunder group is actually a relatively serious group, which is cool for a bunch of 12-year-olds. But I would love to instill a little bit more seriousness in the group here. So I want to talk about like ratcheting up the spooky elements of this adventure. But we have an elven, high elven paladin. Let's just go elven paladin. We have an elven ranger. We have an elven druid. A lot of elves in the party. So the elves are kind of baked into the lore of the world because of how many elves we end up having in the group. We have a tiefling sorcerer. And we have a gnome rogue. Great. So that's our adventuring party. It is the modified Cragmaw Castle. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And I think it literally says that. I've used the Cragmaw one before. I used it in Storm King's Thunder as well for kind of an initial adventure for them to go on. I actually really like this map. It's very simple. It's very clean. It's doesn't have multiple stories. It's like a one-story thing. It's like pretty simple. So I wanted to go with the Cragmaw Castle. Here's what we know about the Voth Keep and its history. Well, it's located deep in the Witchwood. I also said Wombwood, which is the location in Yogg. Located in the Witchwood, which we should do a little thing about the Witchwood as well. Witchwood. Haunted forest. Not sure why it's haunted or what the cause of it is. But think very much like Mirkwood in the Hobbit film series, where it's got kind of a psychological effect on you. Psychological trickery. Wandering the Witchwood is dangerous. Sleeping in the Witchwood is especially dangerous. There's something about, Nuclear Wolf used it in one of their one-shots. I think it's a great little castle for that purpose, right? If that's what you need, this has got you covered. So the idea is that, like, as you move through the Witchwood, it can kind of play tricks on you, little magical, mind-affecting illusions and charms and things, right? You end up walking in circles, or you can't hear anything. If you go deaf, you can't make any noise, and like little weird magical tricks. It's got a number of different kind of factions that are operating in it. There are 2 main ones. We have Wood Elves, and we have Dark Elves. Now, what's interesting about the Dark Elves here is that, like, I'm trying to separate them from the kind of standard Forgotten Realms, Underdark dwelling elves. Usually when I do Dark Elves, they're a lot more like the Mirkwood Elves in Lord of the Rings, where they're not evil. They're just, often at odds with what the characters want. Their culture is different enough that there are sometimes difficulties in things are lost in translation, essentially. And I also like to add the notion that humans have kind of a superstitious fear of them, as opposed to it being that the drow are evil. I often don't use the term drow. I will often call them dark elves or, dusk elves or something like that. But we have 2 groups. So we have one of the ranger character, the elven ranger, is a wood elf. So there was definitely will-o-wisps would be a real thing in the Witchwood for sure. This is what was tricky. Like they're where we ended, they're a little bit into the Witchwood at present, because they just kind of started on their quest. But trying to think of monsters that they could encounter at first level was really challenging, actually. And so I wanted to do Will-O-Wisps originally, but then I realized that they're way too powerful, right? They're like CR2 and they hit for like 3d6 on a shot. Yeah, I think Fae are definitely in there somewhere. As to how much you want to play with them, we'll see, but that's definitely a big part of it. So we have Wood Elves, and they dwell in a sanctuary. There's at least one Wood Elven community. It has some name, I forget what it is. One Wood Elven community. Community dwelling in and the term I use is a sanctuary. So the idea is that like they have used magic to give themselves a space in the wood that does not have this weird mind affecting power, right? They're able to not sleep, I guess, because they're elves, but trance and exist there and all that kind of thing, right? They have a safe place. The character playing the Wood Elf, the character playing the Ranger, wanted to speak Draconic, but didn't know why they would speak Draconic. And there's a plot point in this campaign, or in my version of Hand of Doom, where there are 5 dragons of the 5 chromatic colors that are still kind of like lurking around the edges of the Elseer Vale. They were once sort of petty tyrants that ruled little kingdoms, but now, you know, because of hundreds of years ago, they were overthrown or whatever. But many of them still live, and they still kind of harbor these resentments about that. So the Wood Elves are protected by a creature called the Guardian in Green, who is a green dragon that's essentially manipulated the elves into worshiping it as a god. Now, what's interesting is that the Dark Elves and the Wood Elves are allied with Dark Elves, but recently Sanctuary was recently destroyed by Hobgoblin raiders. So because they're, you know, new players and they don't understand how to do character backstories yet, all of their backstories are relatively tragic. Well, not all of them, but several of their backstories are relatively tragic. This one, the Ranger being the most. So it's the classic orcs destroyed my village. Rather than them simply being, you know, rampaging orcs, it's this mercenary army called the Iron Fist that is being led by these adventurers, and they're trying to either extort the dragon or make contact with the dragon. They're trying to, there's something to do with that green dragon is why they attacked and destroyed the sanctuary. Basically eliminate the Wood Elves and force the dragon into kind of making a deal with them. Anyway, so that's one community we have. The Wood Elves basically don't exist anymore. Our Ranger is one of the few survivors. Like, we will probably encounter other Wood Elven refugees over the course of the campaign, but that's one of the factions in the forest. And then we also have the Dark Elves. Now, I actually don't know much about the Dark Elves. All we know is that they have a particular tattoo that they wear on their wrists. The Ranger has one. Basically, the conceit is that, like, you know, it's like a drow friend or whatever kind of a thing, and that they are still alive, now, like, monitoring the Hobgoblin force. Great. So that's kind of what we know about the Witchwood. There's this definitely there would be Fae and there would be giant spiders and like those kinds of things as well. But these are the things we've previously established. In terms of the history of the keep, we know that it was previously owned by the Vathriel noble family, and that is the same family that the Elven Paladin belongs to. So at some point in the past, it was a keep that was set up here by these high elven nobles. I don't think that they belonged in the Witchwood. I think that they presumably, you know, sort of pseudo-colonially came and tried to set up this fortification. What I don't know is why it's no longer owned by them, what happened, how do they feel about it. You know, it's been several generations, like elven generations, since they've had that stronghold. So that's something we could figure out that might help us figure out what's going on in the keep. And then the only other stuff I had for ideas were these factions. I think a good dungeon has a couple of different factions. It's a small dungeon, so we don't have to go nuts with it. But I think there's sort of 3 different groups that I can envision being here. So I was talking earlier about monsters and what monsters can like reasonably threaten a low-level party like this, like a first-level party. And there just aren't a lot of them. There just aren't a lot. And my brain immediately went back to one of the first adventures I played when I was a young D&D player, and that's the Sunless Citadel, which is a 3rd edition adventure as well, just like the Red Hand of Doom. And it's about like a vampiric tree that has been spoilers for Sunless Citadel. It was actually reprinted in 5th edition, so if you're playing Tales from the Yawning Portal, you know, cover your ears. But it centers around a vampiric tree, basically like a vampire was staked, and then the stake was still green, and it grew this tree, you know, like on top of the vampire and incorporated the vampire's essence. And so it's this evil tree that can, you know, consume you, and it makes twig blights, and it's this kind of like horrible, thorny, brambly monster. And I always really liked that. I liked the idea that like there's a druid in the adventure in Sunless Citadel that like tends the tree, but I liked the idea that the villain of the adventure was this like inanimate object. Like the Golthias tree is implied to have kind of like, you know, a sinister malevolence, like or sinister intelligence, but like it's still a tree. It can't attack you. It can't do anything. It sprouts these apples that are supposedly valuable. But I always liked the idea of this tree being the true antagonist, right? That it's timeless and it's immortal and whatever. So I was looking at monsters to try to threaten the party with, and the only thing that really jumped out to me were twig blights. You know, relatively low-level plant monsters that I can throw at them, because this will be they haven't encountered them yet, but they're going to next session, and this will be essentially their first encounter in Dungeons & Dragons, period. You know what I mean? Like, this is it. So I wanted the monsters to be, like, pretty basic, like, really simple, but I didn't want to do goblins or kobolds, you know, because you have to explain, like, why are the goblins here? What do they want? One of the advantages of a twig blight is that it is a supernatural creature. It doesn't have the same wants and desires and complexity that something like a goblin or a hobgoblin or whatever would have. And they're probably going to encounter some of these hobgoblins of the Iron Fist, but they you know, like as a first encounter, I didn't want them to roll over the kind of main antagonists of the campaign. They should have a healthy respect for the Iron Fist, so they're going to be their kind of like primary sort of like think of them like the Fire Nation, right? I think that's a really good touchstone. It's like these are the bad guys, but they are human still. They are still people, right? You might look at them and say, oh, they're this occupying force, but you know underneath that there's an actual person. Hey, what's up, Takaya? Thanks for coming. Yeah, please. I love when people come into the stream and work on their own stuff. Yeah, it's awesome to have you. So I'm thinking, yeah, the Golthias tree is what I like the idea of the thing that has taken over the keep. The main antagonist of Voth Keep is this vampiric tree, right? That is like breeding more twig blights, and it's like slowly crawling over the walls. And so you can do a thing where its walls are covered in thorns and brambles, right? And it's like slowly expanding. Where we left off, the party is about to meet, and they've met, but they haven't technically come to terms with an NPC that I sent them to, this sort of like half-ogre lumberjack character who lives out in the forest named Joron Half-Giant. Yeah, let's put him in here. And Joron is like just like a blatant Beorn ripoff. I mean, literally even his name, right? Joron and Beorn. Joron Half-Giant. He is a local recluse and lumberjack. He's got a little Beorn. He's got a little bit Farmer Maggot. Owns 3 enormous mastiffs. Kind of like a guardian of the forest, right? Like, it's similar to Sunless Citadel. Yeah, Takaya. It's not it's an adventure from one of my client games based on a game called Red Hand of Doom, but I am drawing heavily from Sunless Citadel. I didn't want to do all of Sunless Citadel. I just kind of needed a small little dungeon. And I just really like Golthias trees. And they have actually appeared in other adventures. There's a Golthias tree in Curse of Strahd as well. And just because of the CR involved, like the challenge rating of the twig blights and stuff, it feels like a good monster for them to fight at first level. So drawing inspiration from Sunless Citadel, but it's not an adaptation of it by any means. Guardian of the Forest. He's like gruff and unpleasant, but ultimately good-hearted, right? Gruff, unpleasant, good-hearted. I love Beorn. Has always been a favorite character of mine from The Hobbit. I mean, it's hard not to like him. He's like the big cool berserker guy. But one of my favorite things about him was that he's like they're very concerned about his mood, right? That like when Gandalf and the dwarves get to him, it's all about like, okay, you know, he doesn't love dwarves. He thinks, you know, that you're greedy or whatever, and so we have to be kind of careful and slowly introduce you one by one. We don't want to show up with 13 people on your doorstep. And so like that scene of like, okay, 2 more and then 2 more and then 2 more. And it's all about like, will Beorn like accept us? And I wanted some of that energy with Joron, where he's this big, intimidating figure. but potentially an ally. So the way I'm doing it with them is that they've just met him. I think they want to attack him because they're new players and they don't understand, what an NPC is. But assuming that they don't fight Joran, then he invites them in and he basically gives them a place to stay because the Witchwood has this thing where sleeping in it is kind of dangerous and you can get turned around and have charms and things cast on you. He provides them this necessary shelter. But in the process, they have to do a bunch of chores for him, right? Like if you're going to stay under my roof, you got to do these things to sort of earn the guest right. But the point being that when they're talking to Joran, when they're staying with him, he can tell them stories about like, oh, the keep is fallen, the keep is a bad place. Let's yeah, exactly. Let's see what we did to Bilbo, right? Let's just bend the knives and oh my gosh, blunt the knives and bend the forks. That's what it is. But it's the keep is a dark place. It's very, very Mirkwood, right? Like a shadow has fallen over Dol Guldur kind of a thing, right? He can tell them stories about, I think, the Golthias tree. He may know about the Iron Fist, right? The mercenaries that are like kind of operating in the forest. But I think his primary concern is the spread of this tree of the Golthias tree. So what I want to know, the first thing before we get into the rooms and stuff, is I want to know like what is the deal with the keep? Like it was once owned by this high elven noble family, and then something drove them out. Oh, let's really quick talk about the other two factions before we get into that. So one of the factions is a scouting party from the Iron Fist, trying to figure out, hey, is there a road through the forest? Can we approach Witchcross from the other side? What is this structure? It's not a large group. It's probably like 3 or 4. And I think they're like camped out in the ruins of the keep, just kind of scouting it and doing some reconnaissance, and the party encounters them there. So this is kind of their first in-game brush with the Iron Fist, even though they've already fought them before. But it should be kind of like, wait, what are they doing back here in the forest? There must be this other sort of wing of them. And in truth, there are 5 different armies that are moving around, each one of them led by one of the members of the Hand of Doom. So there's a small scouting party. I liked the idea that if they are there, they're kind of they are also at odds with the Golthias tree, right? That if the tree is like taking over maybe one of their pickets, one of their sentries got grabbed by it or whatever, was killed by twig blights, and that they have kind of a besieged mentality, that they're holed up in one of the towers or whatever, and they can't leave because the tower's like, been wrapped around with brambles or whatever. Like I like the idea that they are trapped almost. They're bad guys, and you ostensibly have reason not to work with them, but they are not in a good position. They've become entrenched here. So that's the Hobgoblins. I think that's like a room or like an encounter. I don't think it's a big factor. I think the Golthias tree is the main theme, and then we have little flavors. The other one are the Dark Elves. So the party is currently engaged in a skill challenge to successfully make it to the keep. And if they fail that, instead of making it to the keep, they basically get sort of Lothlorien style or Mirkwood style surrounded by like a Dark Elven patrol, right? So let's put Dark Elven patrol. That is, I think, monitoring the scouting party of the Iron Fist, but doesn't quite know if they should interact yet, right? So they're not necessarily antagonistic to the party, especially if they have the Ranger with them, who historically has been allied with the Dark Elves. Then you could conceivably see them like teaming up or being allies. But it's kind of, who are you? What are you doing? What's going on? So those are our 3 factions. I don't even think the Dark Elven Patrol is necessarily in the keep. I think it might be like around it or on the borders. Our map doesn't show the forest. I'm imagining that it's thickly forested. There are probably even like trees growing up through the keep. I grabbed the clean one, but now that I'm thinking about it, the Cragmaw Castle is in I believe it's in Phandelver, is presented as being crumbled and ruined. I might grab that old map as well, because I think that one is maybe a little better for what I need. So these are our factions. It would be kind of interesting to say that the original owners, the Vathriel like lineage or their dynasty. Yeah, dead hobgoblin burnt to a crisp. That's cool. Yeah, something like that. I don't know if it would be burnt because if it's all kind of woods and trees and stuff, but I love the idea of the brambles like, grabbing people and sucking their blood. Like the idea of like vampiric thorns, I think, is pretty neat. So I think, what if we say that it was originally set here? And I don't think we have to get too complicated with its history, because the kids don't really care. But I need to have some idea of, like, the paces. So, like, established by an enterprising ancestor of the Vathriel family. An attempt to sort of colonize the Witchwood. Driven away by Dark Elves, who saw the construction of the place as an act of, I mean, who arguably rightly saw the construction of the place as an act of aggression. I'm trying to think, like, how do you get from that to the Gulthias tree? Because I like the idea of maybe the Gulthias tree. Like, again, it's so funny. I picked the wrong map. I should go get the crumbled one. But the idea of the Gulthias tree being a, like, I think it's in the C Team, that Ack Inc. show, where they talk about the idea of, like, wood elves using, like, you know, fast-growing trees as, like, siege weapons. You know, they can, like, plant a tree next to a wall, and it grows up, and then they can either climb up over it, or they can plant it, like, underneath, and then the roots, like, tear up walls. Like, the idea of them planting the Gulthias tree as a siege weapon, right, to destroy the keep. That it's like they reclaimed it, and then they wanted to turn it back to nature, but somehow that went wrong, or it, you know, they don't really care. Maybe the Gulthias tree is more of a destructive force than that. Like, I like the idea of it originally being the Dark Elves who drove them out and who maybe planted the tree. Because if you do that, then it's a lot more synergistic, as opposed to saying, like, the Dark Elves drove the High Elves away, and then unrelatedly a vampire was killed here, right? Like, I think if we kind of reflavor the Gulthias tree as a Dark Elven weapon. My only issue with that is it does make them seem more responsible and more evil, and, like, why wouldn't they sort of take responsibility for it? If it is spreading out, if it's this, like, force of corruption, then aren't the Drow kind of on the hook for that, you know? And that if they don't care, or they haven't done anything about it in however long it's been since this happened, it kind of implies that they don't care about the forest. And if they're elves, and, you know, we're not doing them as Underdark elves, we're doing them as, you know, sort of arboreal forest-dwelling elves, you know, why wouldn't they do something about it? I mean, we do kind of need to make a distinction between a wood elf and a dark elf, I guess. Right, like, they're both in the Witchwood. Why do they? Why are they distinct? You know, what are their two different? Are they just two different tribes? You know, I like the idea of the tree being a weapon, but it has to have, like, gone bad, or, like, you know what I mean? Like, there has to be some element to it where it's not functioning as intended, because I don't think the Drow would just, like, poison the wood, you know, sight unseen. And I also think that even if they did, because the High Elves were driven out so long ago, why is it taking so long? Like, why has it taken this long to destroy the keep and put it back? I mean, it could be like an elven timescale thing, right? That, like, it seems like it was a long time ago, but even then, it's like the person who established it was an elf as well. So I'm trying to think, like, maybe they planted it, you know, on top of a barrow, or on top of a you know, like, yeah, what if it's like colonize the Witchwood, driven by Dark Elves, saw this as an act of aggression. During the attack, the Vathriel scion was slain, and his body was entombed below the keep. When the gone wrong, killing the druid in the process. Yeah, I think it's something like that, Nuker Wolf. That's kind of where I'm at. When the Dark Elves planted the tree to destroy the keep, they didn't realize they planted it on the body of the Vathriel, of the High Elf, or the dead High Elf, right? Planted the tree to destroy the keep. They didn't realize that they planted it on the body of the slain high elf, his hatred and like vengeance possessed the tree, causing it to warp and corrupt. Yeah, okay. So that means that like the Dark Elves are aware that the tree has been corrupted, but don't know why, and have yet to solve the problem of how to purify the tree. I think that's good enough. How much we're going to get into that, you know, we'll see. But I think in terms of like the rough structure of it, because I like then that gives the Elven Paladin a little bit of like a beef with the Drow, right? That like the Drow have beef with the Elven Paladin has beef with the Drow. It's unclear who's in the right. If you wanted to, Nuker Wolf, you could even say that the Elven Patriarch who or Matriarch, who knows, the ancestor who established the place, right? Was a druid, you know, and that it somehow was infected. Well, it wouldn't be during the attack, Kimmy. I imagine it's like it's waves, right? So if it's a keep, if it's a stronghold, it can withstand multiple attacks. Kind of think about like how Balin dies in Moria in Fellowship of the Ring, right? That like he's killed by the goblins, but they still have time to like build the tomb and everything for him. I think it's like a siege, right? Where is the beef? That's my question. What's up, M. Grant? Thanks for coming. Yeah, so I don't think it's like it's not one battle. It's like they you know, fight a couple of battles, a number of skirmishes or whatever. You know, you could even do a thing where like the Drow never assault the keep. They just like kind of guerrilla warfare the elves as they're like out on patrol, you know. Yeah, I think that's cool. Okay, cool. So that's all good. I'm down with all of that. The evil tree, the hobgoblins, the dark elves. That seems like plenty to me. Let me open up my version of the map so I can look at it as well. And we'll just try to go through the chambers and figure out if we have what we want to put in all of them. So we can start by saying, like, you know, where are things sort of planted? Like, where are the things we know about already? I liked the idea of the Dark Elves. Yeah, catacombs for sure. So there might be another layer underneath, but I don't want to make a whole other map for that. My instinct is that, like, they would have planted the tree essentially in the center, right? If the point is to try to, like, break up the castle. So my instinct is that it's in, like, that junction between 8, 9, and 10. Like, that kind of 3x3 square. You guys see that? That's my instinct, is to say, like, that's like, the tree itself is planted there, and it's, like, a big, like, 10-foot, you know, X in the middle. That's kind of the 10 is the chamber of the tree. But it like, breaks into 8 and 9 as well. Let me see if I have the old version of the map. Now I feel so silly. Like, why didn't we use that one? If I do, maybe I'll take a second and I'll switch it. It's funny, because when I used it before, I called it Night Keep in Storm King's Thunder, and I covered it in brambles. So it is pretty appropriate. Yeah, I don't have it labeled, but I think that works. I think, like, Chamber 10 is kind of where we do the... Yeah. So let's start doing some chambers. We can put down the ones we know where they would make sense, and then we can develop those a little bit more. So I have a weird little system. Okay, chambers. And then let's do, like, 13. So we have 10, Chamber of the Tree. We need the Hobgoblins as well. Where do we think the Hobgoblins are holed up? It could be 11, but that feels like so close to the tree. They would have a better idea, you know, that it's in there. Maybe 7? Like, kind of that 6, 7 area over there? Because it seems like they would have just come in. It could also be 12. I wonder if it's 12 for where they're holed up. Because, yeah, I think it's a little group of you know, engulfing the basement catacombs. Yeah, I think that's it. I think the lower level is just full of roots, right? I think the roots are also up here on the top level. Like, I like the idea of them kind of busting through the walls and crumbling down things. I like the notion that they're trapped. So I know in the original Nightkeep map that there's, like, crumbling holes in almost all the towers. Maybe we put them in room 8, but then I think they'd be so close to the tree at that point. Where do we think is a good place for this Hobgoblin camp? Like, where are they holed up? My instinct is 12. I think 12 is where they go. Unless someone has a better idea. 12. Let's scroll this down. Iron Fist. Encampment. Okay. So let's just go through the individualized stuff here. We've got 1 is kind of like the entry. 2 is the atrium. 3 is sort of North Tower. Really, I probably should have done 3A, 3B. North Tower. And 5 is like North Arrow Slit. 6, I think, is meant to be like a banquet hall. 7 is South Tower. 8 always kind of struck me as like a chapel. 9, I'm not sure what that is. I guess there's 2 South Towers because there's a... Yeah, fair. So it's like Northwest Tower. And then Southwest Tower. 11 is Southeast Tower. 12 is Iron Fist Encampment. And then 13 is Northwest or Northeast Tower. You know, and it's approximated. Whatever. Okay. So I have this thing when I do dungeons where because I sometimes am bad at figuring out exactly what would be where, you know? I think a dungeon room can essentially have one of 4 things. Well, one of 3 things, really, but you can also add treasure, depending on whether you include treasure in there. So you can have, a dungeon room can have an encounter, you can have a hazard, or it can have information. And those are kind of the 3 things I think are the fundamentals. You can also put treasure, so really you could say 4, right? And I liked, sometimes rooms will have multiple ones, right? And they have both. They might have like an encounter and treasure, pretty common, right? It might have treasure and information, it might have information and hazard. You know, you can combine them in any group. But those to me are like kind of the 3 categories of what you might find in a dungeon. So you want to try to get a healthy mix of them all, you know? What's interesting though is that like we kind of have to think about the history of like who would have been here and in what context and what's here now. So yes, these are our factions, but I don't think those should necessarily be the only kinds of threats and encounters that they can find. Information is tricky too, because what information is there to convey? Like, is there like a mystery here beyond, you know, why is the tree doing this? Which I think is a compelling mystery. But I'm not sure what the answer necessarily is, and how you would like discover that. What are the clues along the way? But let's think of some like hazards and encounters. So like, associate with each one of these. So we have obviously twig blights is a big one. Twig blights. In terms of other blights, I don't love the other ones as they're presented, but I do remember that Sunless Citadel has like a tree thrall thing where it can like absorb people and then, you know, spit them back out as like weird kind of children of the corn, like, you know, pod people sort of a thing. We talked about this in Monster of the Week a couple of weeks ago when we did blights, but I still haven't done this yet. But my plan was to redesign those, I think they're like needle blights, as bark blights and have them essentially be like pod people. So with bark blights for sure. I like the idea of like the hobgoblin, you know, one of the ones is missing or whatever was grabbed. Maybe there were 6 of them originally, there's like 3 left, and 3 of them have been turned into these bark blights. But in addition, there's also just like brambles, right? Like hazards that get in the way, and maybe like entangling roots. are things that can potentially be a problem. Let's put like vampirism. Vampirism, essentially. You know, things that suck the blood. And then Hobgoblin Scouting Party, obviously you've got your scouts, you know, like our soldiers. And then Dark Elf Patrol, you've got kind of rangery dudes. So I feel like I like the idea of there being like some kind of a time pressure or some kind of a thing where they're there just to clear it out. So they have to figure out how to defeat the tree. You know, that's kind of the real question. So maybe it's about the ooh, what if you do like fucking Blood Raven from Game of Thrones thing where the original ancestor is like, you know, in the tree. It's like grown up around him. Like he was, or them. Let's roll a gender. Because that might help me. I always do this randomly. Roll a d3. Female. Okay, it's a woman. So it's Liz like grown up around her, and she's kind of like imprisoned in the bark of the tree. Maybe she's even like kind of half alive still. That might be kind of spooky. I like that. So it could be about like putting, well, but the problem with that is that then the thing I liked about the Golthias tree is that it's just a tree. I think you have to like cut your way through to the roots, and then there you see the tomb, right, that it's like reached into. So I don't think she's like incorporated in, because if she was, then you would just like, there, get her, you just try to kill her inside that, and that would be, it's too boss monster. I like the idea of it's a tree, right? Okay, cool. So that's the objective, right, is to get rid of that, and also presumably to clear out the other threats. I would love there to be like one other kind of creature in here, you know. Is there some sort of a monster that like opportunistically, you know, hangs around? Like, are we talking like sturges or something, you know, something that's like drawn to the tree, or, you know, has it animated other dead? But that feels very much like it's just a twig blight or a bramble or bark blight, you know? Like, what's another, like one other kind of monster just to give us a little bit of variety? Like, let me get the monster manual, because like, again, we have to stay super low level in terms of threats. I'll be right back. I'm gonna grab my monster manual, and then we'll take a look. It's just tricky because like half of the monsters that, you know, you immediately think of are like, you know, too high CR. I find beasts are a good place. Maybe like a giant spider. Ooh, go find a tree in my campaign. Even though I couldn't move, I gave it ability. Ooh, that's cool. Where it can like crush a blight to heal. That's nice. I like that. I think maybe a giant spider, because it's like nice and classic, and it's a thing you could conceivably see, like, you know, creatures that wander into the brambles. Yeah, let's put a giant spider in here too. Ooh, mephits are good as well. Mephits are like, they're so arcane, you know. I'm trying to think of like what context you'd have a mephit. I mean, you can maybe do a cool thing like a wood mephit, but again, a wood mephit just feels like a twig blight. Grell are fun. They're also they're too high level, I think. You got to get really low level. So I think we might do a spider. Just because, you know, here we are. We're in Mirkwood. Oh, vultures. Vultures are cool. Yeah, let's do a spider. I think I would do like crows over vultures just for the tone, but carrion birds are smart. Okay, so I like the giant spider maybe even being in the main area, although that kind of gives you the wrong vibes, right, when you first come in. So I think before they get through anything, right, like approaching the keep. Let's do approaching the keep. Can you guys see the text? Let me know if you cannot see it. Swarms are fun. You can do a swarm of ravens, maybe. As the party, or swarm of spiders, as the party approaches the keep, they must navigate a bramble maze, right? You got to do that. It requires a, I don't know if it's necessarily a maze, but I think it's just like a thing of brambles, right? They must navigate the twisting brambles. This requires an acrobatics check, and on a failure, the brambles drink some of their blood, reducing their maximum hit points. So, like, I think that's a consistent thing, right? Like, is that the brambles in here, the roots of the tree, drink blood. So, like, it probably won't be, like, a lot, but I like the idea that, like, every time you touch one or you move through a space, you have to make a check, and if you fail, it nicks you, and it drinks a little bit more of your blood, and it reduces your maximum hit points, right, until you can rest. I think that's, like, a consistent theme. I kind of like the idea of the gate, of the entrance being sort of open, that it's like, you have this little area over here around number 1. And I like the idea of them kind of like blundering into a trap or not really realizing that they should be cautious because they probably won't think that yet. They're brand new. So my instinct is, yeah, like a spider's web or something like that, right? Like right inside the door, maybe. I also like, I'm trying to think what's in the, yeah, let's do the spider in here. So this is going to be an encounter. I might even roll randomly because that sometimes can help you figure out what to do. Let's do 11. So we have an encounter in here. And you're not like bound to these when you roll them. It just kind of gives you a starting point. It actually kind of also has a hazard, I think. So what I'm thinking about doing is saying that one giant spider, a spider web is strung across the entrance to the keep. Like just like 5 feet inside the door, there's a spider web like there, and you only notice it in certain lights, right? It's like invisible in its current condition, and so you like walk right into it and you get stuck, and the spider comes down from above, right? It's strung across the entrance to the keep. When a character passes into the room, they get stuck in the web, and the spider comes crawling down from above. Just like a very simple, you know, this is what's interesting about this kind of a game, is that like you're sort of trying to teach the kids, these are some basic assumptions about Dungeons and Dragons, right? You should do perception checks into rooms before you go into them, and you know, this is kind of how monster attacks work and things like that, right? This is what a trap is. So what we might do is I might just roll some of these for encounter, hazard, and information, and then maybe, you know, multiple. We'll roll like a d4 every time, and we'll see what we get. So we'll do it for the entry. I got 3, which is encounter, hazard, information. So there's some kind of information here. I might just like roll them all now, and then when we get to the rooms, you know, if we have a different idea, obviously we can do that. So this one has information. And you don't want them to be like encounter, 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 or information, 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 information. You kind of want to, you know, tease them out. So we'll see. But I like that at least as a starting point. Some kind of information. So chamber 3 in the northwest tower. Yeah, this is going to be a pain to do this every time. That is going to be what? Also information. Okay. I'm already seeing a bit of a problem. I like the idea of there being some kind of a sign outside, like if this information being like in chamber 1, like a message in Drow, a message in Dark Elf, you know, kind of like abandon hope, or like, you know, it's some kind of a like stay away. sort of the like you know, dead inside kind of a thing that either they would put up since or they put up initially. Okay. Traps flavored as plants. That's cool. I like that. Northwest Tower 4. I have Hazard, so that might be a good place for that. The Hazard over here. And then in the arrow slit, I have information again. Okay, that's getting to be a lot of information, but we'll see. We'll cross those bridges when we come to them. Information. All right, I will shrink those later. Banquet Hall has information again. This is getting to be a boring dungeon. Southwest Tower, number 7. There's an encounter in here. Interesting. What is that encounter? Encounter. Okay, and then the chapel has multiple. Cool. It has information and an encounter. Okay, cool. I love that. Encounter. Information. I was kind of hoping for more hazards. We might replace some of these with hazards. There's a lot of information right now, and there actually isn't that much story to tell necessarily. Okay, this one has 9 has multiples. Cool. It has an encounter, and it has a hazard. Cool. That's a good one. Chamber of the Tree is presumably going to have. This isn't a dungeon; it's a library. Yeah, exactly. A lot of information. But like, that's what's fun actually about information is that it, you know, it can be a corpse. It can be like clue might be a better term for it, right? It can be any piece of lore or like non-threatening stuff that the point of this is to drop a clue or to suggest some story or whatever, right? You know, an encounter or a hazard can do that too, but information is just that. You know, it could be atmosphere. It could just be like, this is meant to creep you out, you know? Whatever it is. Okay, encounter. So for 10, I have hazard. And I kind of like that. Like, probably you end up in an encounter in here because it's the Chamber of the Tree. But I like the thinking of the tree as more of just like a straight up hazard. 11 is hazard as well. We know that 12 is encounter, but let's see if it's another thing as well. Yep, just an encounter in here, okay? And then Northeast Tower, that little tiny room. And we'll be sprinkling treasure in here as well. This one is, oh, this is 2 things, okay? It's information and an encounter. Interesting. Encounter. And again, we'll move these around depending on what we think, but it's just meant to be a jumping off point for brainstorming. Okay, so let's talk about this first one, a message in Dark Elf, abandon hope. Yeah. You know, my instinct again is like dead inside or whatever, but like I think it would be a little more formalized than that. I think it's cool if it shows that the elves like I think it's more dramatic if the warning is specifically targeted against, you know, the people who originally built the keep, like do not build this, and it's old and overgrown. You know, maybe it's even like a broken, I don't know if it's like a sign. Like I'm trying to think like how elves would leave that, you know, like what's like they wouldn't paint presumably if they're more kind of like, you know, woodsy. I guess they could use like plant dyes. You know, it's too silly to have it be like spelled out in like vines or whatever, but I like the idea of there being some kind of like elf sign on the door. It's almost like the rune that Gandalf carves, but you know, by now that would be long faded. Bring the shears. But it's kind of like a thus ever to colonizers sort of a thing, right? It's like a warning they wrote to scare away any reprisals that might have come. Ooh, a magic mouth is pretty cool, actually. I like it as a message, as like a piece of art, but maybe a magic mouth is better. A talking plant is too Audrey too, you know. I mean, maybe it's like maybe there's a statue that they enchanted to speak, right? An enchantment the drow placed over one of the statues. Because you could say that like either side of the door or like carve it into the stone are these statues of like high elves or whatever, to speak. It could even be like a ooh, that's pretty yucky, Nuker Wolf, an animal stuck in a plant. I wonder if it's like the severed head of a statue, like wrapped in vines and speaking the elven tongue. Warning, colonizers, whatever the term is. The issue with that, though, is that, like, it's going to make it look like the drow want the keep to be this way. They want it to be, evil. I'm worried that's going to come across that way. If it's like a sign that... If they left some other kind of sign, and then the tree, like, overgrew it and broke it or something like that, like, I kind of prefer that. I like the magic mouth. I think we should say that, because that could be a cool thing in another room for information. But here, I think it conveys the wrong message. If the tree is out of the drow's control, then we almost want to kind of telegraph that the drow had left some sort of a warning, but then the tree overgrew it and like broke it. I mean, it could just be that the head is lying on the ground, maybe not wrapped in vines. Like if the head is just like discarded, the severed head of the statue lying discarded at their feet. That Nuker Wolf brings up a great point. You always have to be a little careful about content. You don't want to get too gratuitous because they're kids. Oop, an alarm going off. That speaks to them in Elven, warning them to turn back. Yeah, I think it's cool if it's like, it was meant to be up there and meant to be like an intimidating thing, but the like vines and roots have broken it, and so the head is like lying on the ground. Cool. So Northwest Tower has information as well. I don't have a great hit for all of this information. I mean, because I think the implication is that the High Elves were driven away. I don't think they had sort of a like last stand in here. You could maybe do a corpse or two, like a skeleton or two they couldn't put to rest. But it feels to me that like because his family persisted, they weren't all slain. I think they fled. I don't necessarily think that they were all killed. So I'm okay with like one or two, corpses. But it feels like it's a you don't want to imply that they were all massacred in here. I think one thing we could do too with the excuse me. One thing we could do too with the encounters is we could do a one of the bark blights could be a drow or a high elf, right? That like they would have like, if there were corpses, they've been grabbed by the tree and animated. So maybe let's say one of those is that's the case in one of these rooms. Like in the Southwest Tower here, in one of the arrow slits, there's a bark blight. One bark blight. Like an elven archer slain during the drow attack, the dark elf attack, now animated by the vines. I like that it's in 7, right? So it's in that tiny little arrow slit room that they were shot and killed, and they were left there, and then over the years the roots got to them. Decorations tattered. Yeah, I don't hate that, actually. Because 6 for the banquet hall has that. So yeah, I wonder if the banquet hall has some tattered decorations and stuff. Oops, I keep doing that. Stop it. Go to 11. Tattered. Decorations. Implications of a meal or a feast. Now run through with vines and brambles. The tables knocked over. The tapestries torn. It's a lot of information, though. I might want to, on a couple of these, roll again. Like, 6 seems like a good place for an encounter, you know? Because it's so big. That's cool. Yeah, growing through the decorative armor. Maybe that's good for 3, right? Like an armory wrapped in vines and thorns, growing through faceplates and sword hilts. I would also love some indication of the Hobgoblins passage, right? Like if the Iron Fist is camped out in room 12, how did they get there? You know? It seems like they probably came through I mean, yeah, I don't want to lose the giant spider, but it does kind of feel like they would have encountered it, right? Like, maybe they came through 14, but if they came through 14, then they saw the tree for sure. Yeah, I think they came through 14, and they just kind of, like, gave the tree a wide berth and ended up camping in 12, right? So they're not even really aware of the giant spider. So let's put 14 down, because then I think that one should definitely have some information in it. I feel like it's still missing something, the dungeon, you know? South, or what is this? Postern door. Okay. Let's figure out these bark blights. I would like one of them to be a drow, one of them to be a high elf, and one of them to be a hobgoblin. What else do we have? We have encounters here in the chapel. We have encounter in 9. I'm trying to think of, like, how do we pace this out? So they come in through 1, right? They encounter that spider right away. If they go north, then it's the armory. And I think we could conceivably put some magic items in there. But again, yeah, the hobgoblins would have come through. So if you look at the map, 14 is that little postern door down there on the southern part. You see that little staircase? It's kind of hard to see it, but it's right down by the but kind of like a left of 11 is the little red bit there. It's hard to see, but that's 14. So I'm trying to think here. Armory feels like it would have treasure. But the problem with having 5 PCs is you gotta find 5 places to put treasure. So some weapon or armor in here. You know, presumably like untouched by the growth. Some kind of a hazard in here. Ooh, what if it's like a pit trap that drops you into the catacombs? Pit trap. A section of weak floor that drops you below and into the catacombs. You know, a chance of obviously falling damage, but also you could get cut up by brambles. So cut up by brambles. Once fallen, there's a, like, you could crawl, you can either climb up the brambles, or you can crawl through the catacombs, which lead to Chamber 10, encountering twig blights along the way. Like, what a cool encounter that is, where you're like hands and knees through these tunnels that the roots have like plunged out, and you know, little twig blights are coming down through cracks and stuff and attacking you. Yeah, let's see. Encountering twig blights along the way. So let's maybe talk about the Hobgoblins really quick. So they would have come in through 14, right? So like information here is definitely like trace of Iron Fist, like arrival. There's some like they busted down the door or something like that, right? Like they in some way encountered something. Maybe there's like blood smeared on the stone. You know, if they came through the maze or the brambles and they got all cut up. And they would have come through 10. Presumably like giving the tree a wide berth. And then done some scouting. I like the idea that they came in and like in some way they're like barricaded in, right? That like they camped in 12 and then they were attacked by twig blights or whatever, and so they barricaded themselves in there, and then, you know, one of them went missing or whatever it is. Yeah, so there's actually like a barricade. The Hobgoblins have barricaded themselves into this tower. Ooh, what if in 13 one bark blight like they barricade themselves into this tower, having been attacked by twig blights their first night camping. One of their number was infected by something and is slowly turning into a bark blight. They've locked them in Chamber 13. Right? Probably even like their captain or something, right? Their commander got infected as they were trying to like fight their way through the twig blights, just they were coming through Chamber 10 or whatever. Which then implies the existence of something like that, right? Of like I want to do like a Jumanji thing where they're like flowers that shoot darts or something like that, you know, like I like the idea of flowers. Maybe in 4, we need a hazard in 4. Oh no, that's the pit trap. Yeah, shoot. Well, we can put hazards in other places. We don't want it in 5 because that's so close to another hazard. I like the hazard in 4 being the pit trap, because it's like the furthest away from 10. You'd have to crawl halfway across the keep. That's neat. Okay, I might need to take like a 2-minute break. I gotta go to the bathroom. I gotta get some more water. So I might put you guys on the screen for just like 2 minutes while I get some more water to help wet my throat, and I need to go to the bathroom really quick. But I think this is cool. I think we're headed in a better direction. I really like the idea of the captain being turned into a bark blight and like locked in Chamber 13. I think that's cool. Okay, 2 minutes, everybody. Let me throw up the waiting screen, and then we will be right back. Don't go anywhere. Go to the lobby. Hey everybody, I'm back. Thank you for your patience. Takaya made a joke about intermission, and honestly, like I kind of think an intermission is a good idea for a stream. I think more streams should do it. I think a lot of actual play streams do it because I usually only stream for 2 hours. You know, it's just not quite long enough to have to go to the bathroom, but I did. So I was thinking while I was in the bathroom, the best place to think about it, that I think that yes, perfect. Room 11 has a. So my thought is that, I don't know exactly how they would work mechanically, but my thought is that if the Hobgoblins came in from 14, they walked up, you know, they like several of them got cut or whatever in the brambles. They came up into room 10. They saw the tree. They poked their head into room 11. That's where the captain got hit with one of these darts. And then they like dragged him back into 12 and set up a camp there. And then they were attacked by twig blights. They barricaded themselves. He started to turn into a bark blight. And then they locked him in 13, right? Dart shooting flower. Information. Some clue that this is where the Hobgoblin captain was hit with a dart. Okay, so let's go up here to the Hobgoblin scouting party, and I want to describe their little, like, their thing. So led by captain name. So they all have names like Gray Spear and Steel Shield and things like that. Led by captain name. So yeah, if you guys want to help me think of a name for the Hobgoblin captain, it's always it's a compound name, and it's like how because of the Iron Fist. So, you know, then you get like Gray Spear and Red Cloak to pull from Word of the Stick. Right, like they could be colors, they could be materials, they could be descriptors, so it could be like, you know, a hard helm and things like that. So if you guys want to brainstorm a name for the Hobgoblin captain, that'd be cool. This scouting party entered through a scouting party of 5, of 6. Well, let's maybe say that it was like 8 originally. Entered through the postern door, 14. 1 or more of them wounded. Pharaoh's Felix. What is? It's got to be Blight blank. 1 or more of them wounded in the brambles. What does Felix mean in? Is it Latin? Or is it? I think it's Latin if it's an X, right? Because Pharaoh's is iron. Is Felix hand? No, because Manos is hand. Is that Latin or is that Greek though? Manos I think is Greek. Who knows? If my wife were here, she could tell us. She's a linguist. Or she studied classics, I should say. She's not a linguist. 1 or more of them wounded. Wounded in the brambles. Let's see. They encountered the tree in room 10. Room 10. Poked their heads into room 11, but were hit, but their captain didn't know what to make of it. Didn't know what to make of it. When they scouted room 11, their captain was hit with a dart and forced them to retreat to room 12. That night, they were... Ooh, Clay Hand is actually pretty cool. They were attacked. I might not do Hand because we have the Hand of Doom, but I like Clay a lot. Clay is interesting. They were attacked by twig blights. And so barricaded themselves inside. When the captain started to turn, they locked them in room 13. And that's kind of where they are now. I like that. That's cool. Wormwort. Yeah, that's cool. It's not very battle-like, though. Let's see. Trace of the Iron Fist arrivals. That's there. So how do these darts work? Let me look up the Needle Blight. Because I think it's similar, right? You get hit with one of these needles. No pressure on the name, guys. It's cool. I'm very picky about names, so I normally have a rule where I don't ask people to help me brainstorm names because I tend to be picky about them. But then I broke my rule. So if you want to keep brainstorming, please, I encourage it, but you do not need to. Blights. Needle Blights. You guys have 30-foot range, 2d6 plus 1 piercing damage. That's actually a lot of damage. CR4, you know? Or CR 1/4, excuse me. But I think it's like a slow transformation thing. Again, I think it's like a Jumanji flower. I'm counting on the only... for after he's a Bark Blight? Yeah, that's true. Then he's Wormwort. I'm counting on them having not seen the original Jumanji and just like the new one. How do those work? Ranged attack on a hit, they turn you. You're infected. Or on a hit, you take piercing damage and make a saving throw against the poison effect. If you fail, you slowly begin to turn into a Bark Blight. Let me pull up how it's written in the Galthias tree entry. So completely the thing once it leaves order to the okay, yeah, it takes an hour. Only have 4 thralls at a time. Yeah, so it's not. We can't really use that because it's different. You know, you have the poison condition, and 24 hours later, you become enthralled to the tree. There's got to be a way to remove it, right? They're low-level characters. They don't have access to greater restoration or lesser restoration. So there's got to be a thing where like a cure can be made. A cure can be made by burning the petals of the flower. It's something like that, right? Or by like by crushing the petals of the flower into a poultice. So you have to like go get the flower, but that means potentially getting hit by it yourself. The petals of the flower into a poultice. Which means you probably need a couple of them scattered throughout. Okay, cool. I think that's sort of how they work. Let's talk about the Northwest Arrow Slit over here. So that one's tricky because we already have like one of the Bark Blights in 7, right? I at least want one more Bark Blight, but I feel like, you know, we have both 8 and 9 both have an encounter in it. So I'm not sure what, and this is just information in this one. I was thinking another good place for treasure would be the tomb, right, of whoever the ancestor was. But I'm trying to think what would be in here. Let's maybe skip it if we can't think of anything. I want something else in 6. I feel like 6 is too huge to have nothing in it, you know. So let's maybe try something. Let's try an encounter. That could be the other Bark Blight or Bark Blight in 8. I kind of want like one more kind of monster. We have the flowers, right? And we have the spider, and we have the we don't really have twig blights in here yet at all, right? So I wonder if if Chamber 6 is like a big twig blight encounter maybe, or the chapel potentially. One of the two of them I think is a twig blight encounter of some kind. Twig blights. I'm trying to think if there are like any other plants that are like low level enough for them to kind of to mess with. I don't think so. Also, there's not a list in here by level. Because it's like it's the Shambling Mound, which is way too high. The Treant. I kind of think it's like the Blights and that, and I don't know if there are like too many other plant monsters in 5th edition. Look at the what contents. Ooh, what about like a dryad? A dryad is interesting here because would it in any way be connected to the tree, right? Like, would it be like, obviously it feels like it would be, but then that kind of also defeats the purpose of the tree, or of the tree being, you know, non-sentient and not like the dryad is kind of like a tree's advocate, right? So it's like if it's a dryad, then it kind of like defeats the fun of like how inanimate the tree is. No, let's not do a dryad. We talked about like birds, sturges. Oh yeah, what are those things called? Ooh, gas boar isn't bad. They're in Tomb of Annihilation. Let me go grab it. I think they're called like man traps. Pull it up here. I think they might be too high level, but we could scale one down for sure. Ooh, yellow musk too. That's right. That's probably too powerful, but that's a good one. Yeah, there's a couple of things. Ooh, Vegapygmies, but I guess that's just a twig blight, right? The Triflower Frond. What is this? Since 7 to 8 feet tall, it has 3 bright trumpet-shaped flowers. I don't think I ever used this monster. Got multi-attack. So one of them is a Constitution save or be poisoned. So one of them puts you to sleep. One of them covers you with corrosive sap, and one of them shoots you with like a vine or something. Yeah, okay, interesting. I forgot all of these. Oh man, there's a ton of good monsters in here. But I think they're called man traps. The yeah, CR1, attractive pollen. If you succeed on a wisdom saving throw, or be forced to use all their movement to get as close to the man trap as possible. So yeah, maybe we put one of those in the chapel. Maybe that's kind of cool. Ooh, piercers. Hey, David's got an idea. Yeah, dude, piercers. That's really good. Okay, I like that. Let me look up the piercer as well. Good thinking, David. Piercer's excellent. Yeah, do them as like a weird little seed pod. Or like burrs, you know, like stickers. I don't know what you guys would call them, but a piercer's a great idea. Because they're pretty low level, right? Like, you could fight a piercer. That one's not too hard. CR1/2, yeah, for sure. Oh, because it's based on how far they fall. That's right. Yeah, and they miss. The piercer takes half the falling damage. Yeah, I love that. Okay, so we have a twig blight encounter for sure. We have a man trap encounter, and then we have piercers. I like the idea of like why would they be in these different places? Because 8 has an encounter, the chapel does, and there's a big long room, so piercers feel cool there because they could be kind of all over the ceiling. Man trap, but I could also see the man trap being in there as well. That it like pulls them down towards the far end of the room, right? Like the point of the man trap is it has like an attractive pollen, it makes you come towards it. So I could see that for sure. I can see maybe seed pods. Like I'm trying to figure out like why are they just in this one area, you know? No, I think I think they're cool. I don't really know what Chamber 9 is like intended to be. It kind of just feels like a hallway. Call it North Hall. Yeah, I'm trying to figure these out. Okay. We also have one more bark blight, like a drow bark blight, wandering around somewhere. Between 6, 10. Because 10's the tree, right? So let's talk about this tree encounter, because I could see the piercers being in here, potentially, right? That doesn't give us another encounter. But the Gulthias tree also historically, like, you know, has a bunch of twig blights that defend it. And more room to grow, yeah. Like, I definitely think the tree has, like, defenders. I could also see that if that's what the tree is, that maybe the piercers are, you know, like, hanging from its branches. They could be in multiple rooms, potentially, right? Like, if it's, like, spread out amongst a couple of rooms, like, if it's built in 10, I could see them, if it's in that, like northern corner of 10, I could see it also having, like, spread out into 9, potentially 2, right? And maybe even a little into 8, if it's right there. Unless there's a wall that prevents it from going through 8, because then there could be like seed pods all over the place. They could be in 8 and 9 and 10. I kind of like that. So 8 has a hazard in it as well. And there, pierce pods, piercers. That hang from the tree like fruit and drop on targets below, impaling them to the ground. And then North Hall has them as well. And so does the Chamber of the Tree. That's cool. I like that. But what's the primary thing in... So what rooms don't we have yet? We don't have 5. 8 needs a little bit of work. 9 needs a little bit of work. I want to figure out how the tree encounter is going to go. 13 we have. 14 we have. So... Oh, we want to put... I would love to put the flowers somewhere else, too. But I guess they could just be in 11. That seems fine. I mean, 10 could be kind of like a big combination of all the things, right? Like 10 could have the Bark Blight Defender. It could have like a couple of them, maybe. Yeah, I wonder if 10, because that's the boss, right? I wonder if 10 has the flowers, and it has Twig Blights, Pierce Pods, and the Bark Blights. Yeah, I kind of like that. So that way we get flowers in there, too. So it's got hazard, dart shooting flower. We gotta come up with a better name for that. Dart shooter flower. It's a terrible name. It's got encounter, Bark Blight, and it's got encounter Twig Blight. Yeah, okay. So it's like, that's kind of like, you have to get through all that stuff. And even then, you still have to like dig down into the roots and get down below into the catacomb. I think that's also a good place for treasure. In the tomb of the ancestor's tomb. Some heirloom item. It's cool. Chapel. This one I think is the man trap. Man trap. So maybe it's like a larger version of the smaller flower, right? North Hall. We still don't really have anything for over there. You know, we have Twig Blights in the banquet hall, but I'm not sure why. It just feels kind of random right now. I'm not sure, guys. I'm kind of banging my head against this. I think we essentially have it, right? I think this is a pretty... I want like one more NPC, or like, you know, like a monster that they can, or a creature they can like interact with that isn't an aggressor. You know? I'm thinking like a fey creature, like a sprite or something. You know, someone that could help them if they rescue them. You know, you do like a Venus flytrap thing with a sprite. But I feel like a sprite is going to be similar to a Dark Elf in that they're, you know, a cool ranger running around doing whatever. They're not necessarily like, what's the difference between them narratively? I like the idea of a sprite. Let me look them up. I feel like I never used those kinds of fae. I never used like pixies and sprites and stuff, like the little tiny fairy style ones. I feel like I may be missing out. Sphinx, sprite. Longsword, shortbow, heart sight, invisibility. Forest protectors, heart seers, poison brewers. Ooh, maybe this is sprite who's coming here to collect sap or whatever, right? Like to get ingredients. Yeah, I like that. So what if it's like a sprite herbalist who collects important ingredients from the tree, a potential ally, and also a potential expert. Yeah, I thought about being stuck in a birdcage, but who put it there, right? Like, potential ally. I kind of like it, them just being like they don't understand the like that. There's something about like the scale of it. Like they're here just to get the information, get the samples. Like they could rescue them, but I also kind of like the idea that they're just like autonomous. Like they're just a sprite, and they can talk to them or parlay with them at their will. The party is a little mean-spirited. Like they're kind of just starting to learn that like, hey, they can do things in D&D that you can't do in a video game. So they wanted a crossbow bolts or something from a blacksmith, and they tried to like negotiate. Like they spent a whole hour in town just like shopping and doing nonsense. And they realized, like, one of them tried to threaten the blacksmith with their dagger, saying, like, I want this for free or whatever. Basically tried to rob the blacksmith. And I said, okay, roll me an intimidation check, and he gets a natural 20. And so I described, like, yeah, the blacksmith is terrified of you, gives you the crossbow bolts, asks you to leave, but does whatever you want, essentially. So it, like, I think they now feel like, oh, we can do whatever we want, right? Hey, what's up, Xanarak? I mean, it's a fae. Maybe they put themselves in there to trick them in the birdcage. Maybe. I kind of like them just being a gardener, right? Like they just show up to pick up things. You could, yeah, if you wanted something a little bit more fae, though, you could maybe do that. Like it could be a, what's the goal of it? Like, if they let you out, like what is the sprite's goal? I mean, they are fae, so it could just be weird. But I kind of like them being an expert on the plant life and stuff like that. Like, if they need someone to help, they're just like a little ally. And it's almost, again, it's like a litmus test where it's like, how do you treat this NPC, right? That, like, they can help you, but they have no reason to help you unless you make it worth their while. You know what I mean? Yeah, I think we'll do the gardener. I think that's cool. But yeah, they're in that early state right now where they realize they can threaten people, they can do whatever they want. And I have to kind of like, even right now they're meeting with Joran, half giant. I think they're just going to try to probably attack and kill him and steal his dogs because they don't understand, right? Like how you play Dungeons and Dragons. And I'm in this weird balance of like, do you stomp on them? Do you have the first time they get in a fight be them getting their butts kicked? Or do you let them do that and then have there be kind of consequences for their actions, right? So what I'll probably do next time when they fight Joran, or when they start that session, if they still feel like fighting him, which I'll find a lot of times players will be in one mood at the end of a session and a different mood at the beginning of another, and then like their plans will change. But if they still are aggressive towards Joran and they want to fight him, I might say like, okay, you guys can fight him. He is a fearsome opponent, and there may be consequences even if you win to you having killed this potential ally. But you guys are free to do what you will. You're the main characters, right? We'll follow your story wherever it goes, even if it goes into some dark places, and let them decide. And I imagine that will probably get them to not, right? Like any kind of a thing from me will probably be enough to discourage them. I find that's true with a lot of kids groups where like an adult even suggesting like, hey, maybe don't do that is enough to get the back off. Because, like, they're just like anybody else. They just want to have fun. And if someone is not having fun with that, then I think they are less willing to do it. But the point that I'm getting to is that with the sprite, it can be another instance of, like, hey, this is a character who has no feeling one way or the other about you, right? They're there to get the thing that they want. Oh, the town guards should definitely know. It's tricky because they are sort of the heroes of the town, right? So, like, definitely there'll be some minor repercussions, but they're not the kinds of repercussions you can really do much with, right? Like, it's a small town, and it's a small town that's about to get obliterated by these hobgoblins. So it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, there would be consequences, but because of the weird timing, I don't necessarily know that that will come up, right? That's what sucks about it, is they kind of just get away with it. But at the very least, the blacksmith at this point, like, resents them. You know, that is true, and we can maybe play with that in future. But that's one of those weird things, right? It's like, because it's a small town and because it's about to be sort of destroyed, there's no real consequence. You know, it's that, like, Loki causing mischief at Pompeii. You know, the town are about to have much bigger fish to fry than kind of like chastening their heroes. But yes, that is exactly what you normally do, right, Nuker Wolf? It's just tricky because town guards are always one of those things that, like, at a certain point, it's not realistic that they would be able to take on the party if the party are the local heroes. So there's this kind of understanding that, you know, if you're doing kind of small town adventuring, that the party is more or less, you know, upstanding, that they don't do these kinds of things because there isn't a good way to bring the hammer down on them if they do. You know, you can have some powerful NPCs show up, but I've never found a good solution to that problem. Although it's only probably happened to me once or twice, and really just with those new players who kind of discover that, like, what happens if I do this? What happens if I do this? Like, that kind of video game mentality. Anyway, we're off topic. But I like the idea of the sprite being a character who doesn't owe them anything, and that it's kind of a litmus test to see, like, how do they interact with it, right? It has invisibility. I may even give it, like, a Misty Step power, that if they do grab it or they try to attack it, it just teleports away, and it's like, well, I don't need to mess with you, right? That it's like, you could have gotten something out of it, but now you definitely can't because you've abused the relationship. I think that's everything, actually, with the sprite, because then we have at least encounters or information in all the rooms. It might not necessarily be perfectly comprehensive, but at least in terms of brainstorming, I feel like that's what we need here. So we'll have to take this and synthesize it at some point this week. I'm not sure when that's going to happen, probably Thursday. But yeah, thanks so much, everybody. I think that's where we're going to leave it with Voth Keep. I think that's pretty cool. I have to figure out the Dark Elves and what their deal is, I guess. You could make them kind of proud of being the heroes, because if they kill the town guard, they're definitely going to lose that status. That's true. That's a good point, Zanrak, right? You just have to find the strings for your individual party. I've got one player who is, like, definitely definitely the mastermind. The rogue is a quiet, polite guy, but then he says, like, there was one instance where they met this wizard, the local wizard, is named Bad Bartimus, and the joke with him is that, like, he's willing to help the party, and, like, the town kind of persuaded him to help, but he's not a very good wizard. So he brewed these healing potions. You know, a wizard wouldn't be able to do that, but whatever. He brewed these healing potions. He's an alchemist. And he told them, like, hey, they're great, they'll heal you, but they, I had to kind of squint at a few of the ingredients, so, like, you know, be careful, they might have some side effects. And all the side effects are, like, perfectly harmless. You know, one of them is, like, your tongue swells up. One of them is that, like, a rain cloud appears above you and, you know, rains on you. Like, they're just totally flavor silliness, just to add a little bit of extra, you know, fun to the game. It isn't just, hey, here's some healing potions. It's healing potions with, like, a little flavor catch. But they were all super suspicious of him and didn't really like the character and were worried that, like, he was trying to poison them or whatever. So they're all rolling checks on their potions, you know, and trying to, like, steal from him and all this stuff, just by the fact that, like, he gave them the potions for free, you know, that kind of a thing. So the rogue, like, has this idea. He's like, okay, I'm going to do sleight of hand, and I'm going to take a potion. I'm going to put poison in his water. I'm going to steal one of his poisons and put them in his water so he drinks it and dies. And again, is that very, like, I'm just pushing buttons, I'm trying to see what I can do. I let him steal some acid, I think, but he wasn't, like, there wasn't a bottle of water that the guy was drinking from. You know, it doesn't make sense for him to have water. But it's like, I could tell in the calculated way that the rogue told me, like, this is what I want to do. Like, they've been thinking about it, right? So the rogue is definitely my, like, The sorcerer is also kind of a troublemaker, but is much less focused. The rogue is the one who's quiet, polite, keen, like big little finger vibes from the rogue. So we'll see when they encounter some of these kind of non-combat NPC characters like Joran or the Sprite, how they handle it. I'm curious about it. I'm not too worried. I was a little like worried at the moment, but I think the trick is just to we're way off topic, but the trick is just to kind of smile and roll with it, right? That like whatever they do, as long as it's not getting in the way of another person's fun, you know, they can do it, and you just kind of have to treat the game like, you know, like you're their cheerleader. Like as long as people are excited, it's cool. The only thing I stopped them from doing, I didn't even stop them. I just threatened to give them a villain point, which is our kind of equivalent of like a demerit. If they get 3 villain points, their character becomes a bad guy. They had a pet mouse, and somebody wanted to like hurt the mouse so that way they could test the potion on them. And I said, no, if you harm that mouse, if you like take your dagger and cut it and then try to like feed it the potion, I'm giving you a villain point. Like that mouse doesn't deserve it. Like that's like the like unnecessary sort of torture of innocence is one where I draw the line. But again, I don't think it's like that they're inherently evil or malicious players. I just think they're kids and they've never played this game before, and they're realizing like, oh wait, I can just do anything, and if that guy says it's okay, it's okay. So we're just kind of going through some of those growing pains. Hopefully that'll settle down as we get further into the game. But all that is beside the point. Sorry, tangent. It's just something I've been thinking about this week. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming out to the Adventure Prep stream. It's nice to get back to it. This is our Hand of Doom campaign. I've got like 4 or 5 other games I'm running right now. So next week we will probably be doing a different game entirely. I've got 2 new ones starting soon. One of them is kind of a gothic horror take on Curse of Strahd, and one of them is a Theros campaign. So I've got a lot of other irons in the fire. I'm sure next time we do this stream, it'll be something totally different. We'll see. But if you enjoy the stream, please consider subscribing to the channel. It was nice to see some new people in the chat today. Awesome. Everyone who came out, awesome to see you, Kimmy, David, Nuker Wolf, Takaya, and Zanrak here at the very end. That was awesome. Thanks for coming in. So subscribe to the channel if you're not already. You can click the little bell to get the notifications, all the YouTube stuff. In the description below, you'll also find links to our Twitter and our Patreon and our Discord. I invite you to come check us out on all of them. Discord's a great community. We have a lot of, it's nice and small. It's not one of these huge Discord channels with thousands of people. It's got maybe like 50 people total. So what's nice about that is that then you can really have conversations with folks without having to branch it out into thousands of different individual channels. I guess it's a server with different channels on it. But come check out our Discord server. We'd love to have you there. You can subscribe to us on Patreon for more content like this. You can visit my website, pro-dm.net, if you want to hire me, but I actually am not taking clients at this time because I'm full. I'm fully booked. But yeah, you can also follow me on Twitter at ProDMTimothy, where I tweet a lot about Dungeons & Dragons and Dwarven lore and things from my campaigns, so go check me out there. You can the next time you'll see me will be on Thursday. We'll be doing a monster design stream. I might actually do the Blights, thinking about it now, because then I'll have them ready for Thursday. I think I was going to do the Gelatinous Cube, but I think I will hold off on the Cube and I'll do Blights for our Monster Workshop stream. If you've not been to one of those, it's a companion piece to our podcast where we take a monster from the Monster Manual and we redesign it to make it a little bit more exciting to run. And I think we'll be doing Blights next week, which will be a great synergy with this one, and it will help me. That way I have the monsters redesigned when I need them. Great. But until then, thank you so much for coming and watching. I will see you guys hopefully on Thursday. And if you have any games this week, good luck and happy adventuring.